Today is an exciting episode for the Sound of Ages podcast. We continue our discussion about Wind, Water, Stone, which is dropped, it's out, it's streaming on all platforms. Get it wherever you stream your music. Also, there is vinyl coming. So if you want to pre-order a vinyl, just visit our website at soundofageschoir.com. Today we're talking about Andrew's piece, The Bluebird, which is really exciting. We talk about some of the differences between the French school of thought and the German school of thought. Both good. Andrew follows the French school of philosophy and composition and things, and we kind of talk about the differences between those and how those techniques are captured in The Bluebird. This is the Sound of Ages podcast. I feel like as the countdown goes towards the being recording now, as it counts down, it's like I'm in the Hunger Games and something's gonna happen. It's that boom, boom. But, you know. Yeah, just like that. That would be me, though, honestly. It'd be like, wait, what? It's time? And then I'd be gone. Oh, man. Welcome back, Drew.
Thank you. Here we are in District 1.
District 1, where we can talk about bluebirds safely.
Yes, that's right.
As a segue into the bluebird, I was thinking about this when you first sent it to me. I was like, oh, like Stanford's The Bluebird. And then on the title page of yours, you wrote the full title of, okay, I'm going to try this. L'oiseau bleu. L'oiseau bleu.
That's pretty good. L'oiseau bleu. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because the last is O. Yeah, so l'oiseau bleu.
Ooh, that was really good. Good.
Thank you. When I think about it slowly, from a singer, I can do it better. I can't just read, though. And I didn't realize, though, that the bluebird, even, that, and then I was like, oh, it is the same text. And I was expecting it then to be in French, and it just shows my ignorance and lack of education and familiarity with the poem, where I was like, oh. And I was like, what's the original French? And then anyway, so it was just a little bit confusing at first. I was like, oh, cool. I don't know. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Well, I don't know what's really going on, but the poet Mary Elizabeth Coleridge, we know this poem because of the Stanford for sure. And I think that we frequently just call it The Bluebird, but for whatever reason, the title of her poem is actually L'oiseau bleu, The Bluebird. And I don't know. I think there's probably some affectation of learning by having a little French thrown in, but the text of the poem itself is just English and always has been.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful text, and
it really is
perfectly situated for singing. And you know what? I have heard the Stanford, but I think only once. And when I saw this text, I didn't have it in my ears to the point that it didn't freak me out. I just thought, well, I'm going to encounter this sort of as, on its own terms and do my own setting, even though it's probably ill-advised, No,
I think it's great. There's another piece like that, and I'm sure Owen Park's setting of Here's the Little Door.
Oh, yeah.
Is amazing. And everyone's like, here's the little door. And they're like, the howls. It's like, actually, my high school students here at Waterford School did Here's the Little Door, Owen Park's setting. And it was like, don't know that one. And I think it is totally plausible to set iconic texts. And I think it's really great. And I was that day today years old, as the saying goes, when I learned that the title was originally in French, and I had never heard anyone else set the text. But as I read through it, I'm like, oh, how could they not, though? Because it's so singable. And maybe people have. I'm sure there are settings out there. Again, I have a narrow point of view that I go down, and there's a lot that I don't know. So, but then when I first saw I loved the lilting, playful, dotted eighth rhythms that kind of appear and feel like a fluttering little bird up through the sky. And so, continuing our conversation about madrigalisms and madrigals, it's a subtle little, nod to that text painting. And so, the minute you sent it to me, I've thought it was really fantastic.
You thought, this guy's no Stanford, but he's no slouch either. Maybe I'll give him a chance.
Yeah. I was like, I don't even. Well, it's always hard to. I don't know. How do you? I think that's the mark of a great artist, though, is someone has this genuine sense of humility and desire to learn from like the masters of the past, but are also unafraid to confront it and interplay with great works from the past as well, right? It's this paradox of real confidence in my ability to say something, but I know that I completely stand on the shoulders of people who came before, because I think the idea that artists come up with anything original is not true. Like, genuinely not true.
Yeah, I think as a matter of like personal philosophy and kind of how I teach students too, is I think that even though we are definitely, in our modern era, postmodern era, postmodern, whatever, we have to be at kind of a safe arm's distance from some of our modern ideas about originality, about intellectual property, about creation, and all this kind of stuff. Because I think a few things are true. Like, if we went in our little time machine, our composer time machine back, several hundred years to the Renaissance or something, not only would people have had very different ideas about the self in relationship to the community, but also no ideas about intellectual property, and originality would have been even sort of an odd thing to talk about. Composers were trained for generations by learning how to add a couple of dots to pre-existing lines, right? Like, that's how we learn counterpoint, is by having somebody show us how to write a counterpoint to the given cantus firmus. And it's really not about being original in that way. It's about becoming a good little link in a very long chain that none of us created, and then we're all just a little tiny part of. And so, the fact that Stanford set this text, his setting may be beautiful, and it is, but, literally at a public, the level of public domain access to intellectual property, if we really want to look at it through that lens, you've got permission, I've take anybody has permission to set this text. I think that's healthy. But then more philosophically, if you take a step back and say, take a text like a Kyrie or like, a Magnificat or something like that,
geez.
Right? Like, in a way, a timeless, universally applicable and accessible text is a standard that helps, right? Right, because you're, as a composer, if you're going to do a setting of the Kyrie, it's not your success. Your setting will not succeed because you were so clever about choosing just the right text with just the right theme for the spring choral concert.
It like levels out the playing field in a certain way, right?
Totally. That absolutely.
Across time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in a way, it's like if every composer, like imagine a composition workshop or something where everybody has to write a piece. If literally everybody has to write a setting of Kyrie or whichever, sort of timeless text, a text that's like so beyond the reach of humanity that it's just kind of universal. Yeah. It does create that level playing field, because then what you're doing is you're comparing musical compositional, artistic choices against each other. It's kind of an apples to apples experience. So you look at a text like this, and it's like, it really is like, it's timeless, it's beautiful, it's an image that just hits you, and it like evokes all this melancholy and wonder and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't bother me at all that I made a setting, and I hope other people write settings too, and that we all just keep loving the text and showing our appreciation for it through the music that we write.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. It makes me think of, maybe this is a side, adjacent metaphor, but when I'm a big Harry Potter fan, always have been, because I was the same age as Harry through like most of the books. I feel actually, and so he was my age. It was just a generational thing, and I remember like one of the movies, I was just like really bummed because there was things from the book left out, and I had a really good friend who was pretty wise, and he was like, it's like that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean. There's that Jamaican lady, Calypso, the god of the sea. And they're arguing about whether Davy Jones was in love with the sea or in love with a woman, but the woman was the sea. And she just says, hey, same story, different versions, and all are true. And I was like, huh. And that's actually been something that I found really profound pop up in a lot of aspects of my life. And it's like, yeah, this is the same story as Stanford's version, different version, and they're both true.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool to be able to have that perspective and look at the text that way, because and one thing, I guess, before we maybe dive into some specifics of the music that I find fascinating is you're fluent in French.
Yep.
And you can say things in French.
Je peux me débrouiller un peu, oui.
Wow, that's so cool. Yes. Wait, what did you say?
I said, I can make a little noise, yeah?
And it sounded so elegant and awesome.
Yeah. It's pretty rusty, but
speak English, kind of. But, and then the title is in French.
Yep.
And then you studied the Boulanger School. You're a student of the French kind of philosophy of composition, and it all just sort of, I don't know how intentional that was, but it is very subtle, but in this unified lane of Frenchness. And so if you had to describe maybe, I don't know, big umbrella categories of what distinguishes the French school, what would you say are some characteristics? Things that you learned, things that are evident in your writing, and then maybe as applied to this piece.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, and I think you're right. I think I didn't come into composing early on with a mentor who knew this from that. There was a whole bunch of like stumbling around in the dark, but in 2017, after I had been trying stuff for however many years, I had the chance to go spend the summer working in Paris at the IMA Nadia Boulanger Institute with my teacher, who I consider as kind of my most important mentor, a guy named Philip Lasser, and he teaches at Juilliard by day, and then during the summers teaches in France, where he very deliberately tries to perpetuate a certain style of teaching that is how he became a composer too, studying with Nadia Boulanger, and especially with her kind of one of her chief disciples, if you will, a guy named Narcisse Bonnet, who just passed away. And the way that I've come to understand it, simply by sort of blundering through the side doors, is that there's in what we think of as the French tradition, which is this kind of conservatory system, certainly Fauré, certainly Boulanger, there's this kind of way of thinking, and it's counterpoint first, line first. And the basic way of thinking is that counterpoint, that harmony, if you think about harmony as the art of doubling and spacing, harmony is a byproduct of counterpoint. Line is your chief concern, and harmony results when you do your work well with the lines that you're creating. And
if I to interject really quick, the thing that's fascinating, and I think it just clicked into my brain more, you've said this before, and I haven't really taken the time to process it and think about it, but if harmony is not the study of chords or harmony in the way that it's perceived in tonal harmony textbooks and most, but if you think it's literally how different lines are vertically aligned and notes are doubled or not doubled, but that's still in the category of doubling because you're having more than one thing or two things at the same time, and how far apart those lines are. So if line is key, then it's intellectually evident that harmony is just how you've doubled those notes and how far away they are from each other in those doublings as a result of their line.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, and so, Boulanger was famous for relying very heavily on Bach when she was teaching. And you pause and ask yourself, well, wait a minute, Bach was German, not French. And that's where I think some of the labels break down, because it wasn't really about preserving a Frenchness in music.
Right.
It was an attachment to a way of thinking that comes out of counterpoint. And if you think about granddaddy of counterpoint, we always think about Bach. Well, why is that? Because, he hit the scene in the most kind of supernatural way right at the tail end of what we think of as the Renaissance, where it was sort of counterpoint absent harmony. And now at this moment in time, you have counterpoint that's contextualized in a common practice of which note gets doubled.
Yeah, right.
And how things are spaced.
Yeah, and kind of like socially accepted kind of hive mind almost, like, oh, we all just kind of do this now without anybody saying anything it's kind of how things organically happen throughout history anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like one thing leads to another, but they were really interesting dominoes that were tumbling, right? Because what defines the Renaissance when we think about that music is modality. We're not thinking major and minor. We're not thinking tonal in that terms. We're thinking about modal, and modal scale systems have a different pull on your ears than a tonal scale system. It has a lot to do with the leading tone and where the half steps fall, but especially if you take for granted a world in which you have four basic voice types. Right, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and there's sort of, you think about how that manifests in chorale writing for voices or in keyboard harmony. Even if it's fingers, we're still thinking four lines, but we're dealing in triads that have three notes. Ergo, one of those notes is going to be doubled. Which one and why? You get this whole system that answers it, and it's not so much about that system that gets perpetuated through the tradition, but there's this special kind of attachment to line and counterpoint. And, it's not to say that German composers were not contrapuntal wizards, right? Because you look at the lineage through, say, through Beethoven and then into Brahms, right? Like that sort of champion of counterpoint and very expressive, but also very formally oriented. But something started to happen in the hands of the Germans, as I hear it. This is not me, giving you like the truth from God's mouth or something. But when I think of the German tradition, what you wind up with is a predominant attention to harmony as building blocks of form or something like that, where there's a certain. It's kind of like you're taking well-crafted bricks and you're going to stack them one after the other and one on top of the other or something like that. And you move from one harmonic brick unit to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And the thing that's great about that, and it's true, like multiple things are being true, like you were saying, is that totally. you get, that's a perfect setup if you're thinking about suspending a gorgeous vocal above cool chord changes. Like that's a great way to think. And when you look at even our jazz tradition, things that can be reduced to a fake book or a lead sheet, right? You've got a melody and you have blocks, like units of harmony, and that can be really cool. But meanwhile, across the border, sort of sustained in this like French way of seeing and feeling and hearing, there was this overarching attachment to line, and the line is what accumulates into polyphony, what creates harmony as a byproduct. And when you're thinking about line and you think about like how are we propelling ourselves through time, there's all sorts of exciting possibilities about stuff that doesn't add up conveniently into reducible Roman numerals and explainable chord moments. But counterpoint as jet fuel or something like that. That I think is what we get from that tradition. And they also had maybe some idiomatic ways of handling harmony from moment to moment. If you listen to some composers, like, ooh, that's kind of a French move, the way that they handle sequential 6 chords or chords in first inversion and doublings and things like that. You're like, ooh, that sounds kind of French. And what you're hearing sort of a grouping of stylistic or technical preferences for managing moments of music, but I think the root in all of that is this kind of obsession with the beautiful line, the long line.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool because to me, and like you said, the German school of thought, as it starts to kind of veer away, the French and German in each kind of 20th century comes, and there's all these kind of tentacles going off kind of in their own directions now.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's still because music is a time-bound art, I tend to find myself gravitating more towards that French school as well, which is relatively new, actually. It wasn't until I really started getting into the Renaissance counterpoint in things in my master's degree where I was like, oh man, because I used to be a chord person, being like in rock bands and whatever, and just like, chord. I'd sit at the piano, chords and melodies and guitar or whatever, but it's been interesting to see that shift happen in my own kind of aesthetic taste in a lot of ways. And your ear, like the ear still just like loves cool harmony.
Yeah.
But then it's how is the harmony being produced from a philosophical level changes it for me. And so that's why I think your piece, the Bluebird, has a really, like, you just look at here, if I share my screen, I'll share really quick so we can look at this opening. You're going to see my score marks again. But it's like already you have this sort of duet thing happening between countertenor 2, baritone 1, and then this just cascading the lay interjection, little tweet of a little bird there. Then the duet moves into the baritone line, below the hill. Here's the line moves over to here, and it has this moment. And so just looking at it on the page, just from the first glance, I don't know what the byproduct harmonies are going to sound like quite yet. Like within 2 seconds, I look and see, this is a horizontally kind of contrived piece that is conceived at horizontally first.
Yeah.
And it just happens throughout the whole thing. You can see all of these moments of very line linearness, which is the best.
Well, I got really excited about studying counterpoint because it helped me solve a problem that I felt like I had, which is that, nothing wrong with Roman numerals or chord symbols or anything like that, because we need all sorts of language to explain what's happening at any given moment in time. And the kind of music that I love, it runs the gamut, right? And so if I am playing in a jazz context and I think to myself, G minor 9, boom, I want to drop my hands on the keyboard and have a great voicing and understand what that chord means in context. But when I was composing music, particularly for singers, although it's especially true when you're thinking about like a string quartet or like a woodwind quintet or something like that, where every player has a job to do. If every player's job is just kind of like being one clunky finger in the fist of a jazz pianist, where you're just like clunk, 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 like thing. Yeah. It's just a sequence of vertical attacks. And I was so bored with the way I was writing. It felt like an unclever harmony exercise, or like all I knew how to do was to write a hymn harmonization or something like that. And when I started to see each player as being responsible for navigating an individual and interesting course through time, and that when these individuals were bumping up against each other and interacting, that we would hear all those verticalities, like they take care of themselves. Like you still get the moment, but now you've given the players, you've given the singers a way to move through time, and those moments take care of themselves when you give everybody an independent, interesting, singable, playable, expressive line. And that, to me, that was like water in the desert when I got to start learning that stuff.
Yeah, and again, it really is easy for. This is why I tend to favor, in terms of my own personal taste, this French school of thinking about line, because I think it propels through time. It's easier to be more intentional about propelling people or suspending people through time because each individual part is doing that. Whereas if you're thinking only vertical, it's kind of like you're not thinking of how am I moving forward. You're thinking, how am I moving up or down? Yeah. And it's easy then to get stuck and feel sluggish. So it's like, well, you're not really propelling through time as well. And you're not really suspending time as well either. You're caught in this middle land.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where a lot of like kind of ordinary classroom harmony exercises get mired.
Right.
Because totally. Like the banner is, okay, let's move from identifiable chord to identifiable chord. They're identifiable because you can write a Roman numeral underneath them, and try to get some smooth voice leading and do no harm. And you can write something that's correct in that, but it's just absolutely lifeless. And maybe that kind of teaching is like part of the story. I'm not knocking it, but
totally.
In a thing like this, like I could write a reduction of the Bluebird that is just chordy chord 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 to chord chord chord, and I think it probably would be less interesting, but it would be very vertically convenient.
Yeah. And it would change the nature of the piece, I think, a lot, actually, because there's so many lines going on with subtle madrigalisms that are really important, not just to the motion, but to the texture, which affects the motion and the growth. And thinking about Jan Leroux's guidelines for style analysis, it's like sound, harmony, melody, rhythm, growth. And that growth, how does the piece grow over time? And I think that would be significantly changed, by that, even though that's not to say, again, that you couldn't create a different version of the same story and have it also be true, but it would be like, again, like the acoustic version of Times Like These by the Foo Fighters versus their full version of it, where you're like, whoa, that distortion is really crunchy. Those opening chords, boom, and it just like has this head bopper thing, but then you listen to the acoustic and there's something actually sweet or like borderline tender about that song. And it's like, it is very different, but and so if you're thinking about some of your melodic influences or where you got ideas now for these lines, like how did you come up with, or what are some lines or moments that you want to draw the audience's attention to?
Well, in general, whenever I do a text setting, I'll just do kind of like a fake sing-song of the words to myself. Like I won't know any of the notes that interest me or the harmonies or anything like that, but I kind of want to figure out what the text is made of in terms of vowel content. You know what I mean?
This is gold.
Well,
composers are listening because this is brilliant.
What
is
it
the
means
text made of? I think that is like such a cool sentiment. Anyway, keep going.
Well, what it means is that you spend a fair amount of time seeming like a crazy person to your neighbors because, I'll walk around the house and say things like, well, the lake lay blue, the lake lay blue, the lake lay blue, the lake lay blue, just like trying to figure out like what is this stuff? Because when there's so many.
What about Bob? What about Bob walks by you? I feel good. I feel great. Good. I feel wonderful.
Baby steps into the madrigal. Baby steps.
I am in the madrigal.
I am in the madrigal. But when I'm analyzing a text, there's multiple layers of analysis because on my first reading, I'm just trying to feel like, how does it hit my chest? Like, do I care about the universe more than I used to because this just happened? Like, I want to understand like visceral, intuitive, spiritual, reactions. And then I look at it and say, well, what is it saying both at like a literal level or at the level of like metaphor and poetic imagery and stuff. So, the lake lay blue below the hill, or it, as I looked, there flew across the waters, cold and still, a bird whose wings were palest blue. It's really beautiful language, but it's also like, hey, look, there's a lake and a bird. So you've got literalness, and then you have the image that's wrapped in poetic language. And so as I was doing my fake sing-song stuff, the next level down is what are the vowels and the consonants, right? Because when we're singing, vowels are what sustain a line. You can't sing the letter. You can't sing a K.
Correct, because it comes out of something else.
I mean, it's like good luck.
For those nerdy phoneticists out there who would IPA that, I challenge you to submit the symbols for k versus k. I don't know what they are, but I know that they exist, and I know they are different.
But you see my point, right? Because like
100%,
a juicy vowel is a gift to singers. And if you want a long singable lines, you want tasty vowels. And then the consonants tell you a lot about percussion and syncopation and color and inflection, but you want those vowels. And so the word lake gets stupid the longer you stretch the A out. The lake.
Oh man.
It's unintelligible,
especially, okay, this is a nerdy conductor moment now, especially if you're thinking about really subtle, the vowel journey, because we say in American English, it's a diphthong. It's two vowels, one syllable, which is lake. So it changes from to E, the lake. But if that was like a French or German closed A, the lake, it's almost E. Beethoven, the lake lee blue, which is like also not necessarily the prettiest vowel either. So it's actually a hard vowel to line up. because how tall is the eh? We don't want to say the lakely blue. We don't want to like. So yeah. Anyway, continue on.
Well, there's 1,000 ways to get lost in that lake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's true.
The word lay also diphthong, and you don't know what the thing is that you don't know what the word is until you hear all of it. Lay. You have to like hear the whole word in order to make sense of it. But
because it could be several different words. True.
The word blue. Oh, here we go. This is different because the minute that you get through the blah, you can ride that ooh forever, and you have already understood the meaning. You're not fighting against a diphthong, and you have a beautiful, juicy, singable vowel. So the prosody of it, the practicality of it, I start looking at things like that. And so to me, it's the lake lay blue below the hill. You know, there's just a kind of a natural shape and contour that has as much to do with the poetic image as it does to do with the vowel and consonant stuff that the language is made out of.
They're like pragmatic, boots on the ground technicalities. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you look at the text, there's these predominant images of blue and gray. It's blue and blue, right? You know, this is not a in your face, like glorious sunrise. This is like a soft gray blue, cloudy day, right? And you just see a bird.
Cooler colors. Cooler colors versus warm colors.
Gentle colors. And so
Which is a really cool contrast, by the way. If this track comes right after Invitation to Love, and you have the gold hayfield yellow, you have these warmer colors, and now, which I'm to quote that phrase again, I'm literally today years old when I made this connection, but Invitation to Love is just warmer colors, and now this lake lay blue and gray, cooler colors juxtaposed one track right after the other. We did a smart thing putting those together like that.
We sure did. Let's pretend like it was on purpose.
Yes, exactly.
So generally, I wanted to come at this with harmonies that felt kind of light blue and gray, right? And for you don't really classify harmonies that way. Although there's this wacky orchestration text by a guy named Harry Brandt, who basically tried to do that. Like it's a sort of a color index, and there are orchestration color guides that are quite like a spectrograph or something like. There's the funny stuff where you try to like evoke color, because we talk about harmony, or we talk about orchestration as being colored or colorful, or that orchestrator is a creative colorist, and yet you never really know what that means when you're trying to say like, okay, well, what chord is color, you know? And so,
especially someone who's colorblind like me, that no joke, today, my assistant, Logan Reed, who is he's the voice instructor here. He's wearing this really light pink shirt with these brown dress slacks. And someone said, "You look like a strawberry ice cream cone today." And I was like, but she didn't say strawberry. And I was like vanilla ice cream, I guess. That's kind of weird. And I was like, wait, what color is that? Is your shirt pink? And he's like, yeah. And they were like, what the? It's like, yeah, because I can't see it. But the funny part, even though I'm colorblind, I still do that with harmony. Like, it's like, that's a gold chord on the hayfield yellow. All those chords feel gold. And maybe it's because the word is yellow, but I hear gold, like a warm, rich gold orange when I hear those harmonies, even though I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference between a lot of the colors in real life. I can hear them. Which is wild.
I love it.
It's really weird. It's really weird. So I totally agree that there are bluish harmonies here.
And I don't know exactly, I haven't thought very much about analyzing that, but certainly when like the yellow chord in Invitation to Love, I'm thinking, like a dense, lush voicing. And there are chords that I can voice that to me are like, ooh, golden, right? Or in this kind of thing, I might choose a thinner harmony, a thinner texture with some more like angular kinds of sounds that have what to me sound like not grating, but sort of slightly distant. It's like sounds like brushing off the edge of each other or something like that to me evoke this kind of blue-gray sensibility. Yeah. Anyway, so that, that's basically the approach. But then maybe two other things to say is that in the category of madrigalisms, as we've been discussing, we have this bird character. And not to make too much about the flapping of wings, but that's a central image to the poem. And so you hear these sort of soaring lines that are sometimes in sync with each other, like two wings flapping together, sometimes out of sync, if you kind of imagine tilting and gliding and stuff like that. And that's especially true at the ending, where they kind of, it's sort of like the image of these flapping wings gets a little bit more gray and blurry and indistinct as the bird disappears into the landscape. So there's that. And then maybe the one other thing that I'll mention just in the for fun category is that, getting all musical on the word blue is not new. I'm not that creative or original. Let's be clear about this. And
Rhapsody in Blue.
Oh, there's that one. There's like the entire genre of the blues. And, like I think about all sorts of art of every kind that's been made in connection to the color blue. But one of my favorite things in that wide field is the song called Blue by Joni Mitchell, which is the title track from her record. And I think that song has one of the absolute coolest cold opens ever. There's a couple notes on the piano, and then she just launches into this wild melisma. She's got this kind of crazy folky voice. It's one of a kind. And she just lays out this blue. Songs are like tattoos. I mean, it's just this. It's gutsy. It's visionary. It's as much of an art song as anything else that we ever study. And I have loved that song forever because I was introduced to it by my parents spinning their vinyl when I was a little kid. Anyway, so
as
this is
good parents do.
Oh yeah,
vinyl.
I had an excellent and varied music education as a kid. My mom was all classical records for the most part. My dad was mostly like funk and rock and roll and stuff like that. Like he loved Earth, Wind and Fire and Billy Joel and
Parliament, maybe.
He wasn't quite into the funkadelic scene, actually. But I got there when I was a teenager, no question. But they met in the middle on like Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon, and so the Joni Mitchell records were a constant. Anyway, so on page 8, measure 19. Not that anybody's keeping track of this stuff. But we have the phrase that's culminating, the sky above was blue at last, the sky beneath me in blue, right? And the word...
Sorry, wait, where is that?
Okay, so page 8, measure 19.
Okay, here we
go. In blue.
Sharing now.
Yeah. So it's a little... it's a little silly, maybe. But if you look in the countertenor 2 line, you have that GF moment right there on the downbeat. We do. And then the baritone 1 replies with B flat C. And then G in baritone 2. And that is Joni Mitchell's opening...
Wow, there it is.
From Blue.
Passed through the lines.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
And I'm going to guess that literally nobody notices or cares, and that's totally fine because that one was for me. I don't know why I do this, but I will say that one of the little delights that I have is hiding all sorts of Easter eggs and quotations in my music, and I usually keep them to myself.
No, you got to start sharing them, because then you will become the Taylor Swift of modern choral music, because her fans are crazy about the Easter eggs. So now all that we can do as fans of Drew is to look for the Easter eggs.
And if all I've done today is caused a new generation of people to listen to Joni Mitchell, I've succeeded.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you to Drew.
There you go.
There's not really much else to be said about this piece, because I mean, like most of the pieces, you could go into depth as little or as much as you would want, and you'd always find more nuggets. But then there's also just letting the piece speak for itself, and you can do with it what you will. But by listening and following the score that in this video here, you'll be able to maybe explore some and have some of those little Easter eggs and your own insights that maybe weren't intentional, but if they're insights and meaningful to you, then that's what's so great about following along the score and listening and kind of having your own experience with the piece. So without any further ado, the English version, without any further ado,
yeah.
then we'll listen to the Bluebird and then bid you all adieu, French version.
Well, kind of, because that basically means until the judgment bar of God. So I hope that we have some time before then.
I guess that's true. Adieu, like to God, right? Is that what it literally is, right? Like, okay. Like,
we use it more lightly in English, but I hope I see all of you tomorrow.
Yes, exactly.
À demain.
À demain. So without any further à demain, English version. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't work. But here is the Bluebird for reals. Thank you for joining us on another adventure as we discuss music and musical nerdiness and technical nonsense, but awesomeness at the same time. Hopefully you have checked out and are now streaming, have saved and downloaded Wind, Water, Stone out on your major streaming platforms. And we'll catch you next time on the Sound of Ages podcast.